Spilker, and on behalf of so many people, so many sponsors, we say welcome, Bruchim Habayim, to this day of rediscovering Israel, of learning together, and of being together and enjoying the culture that we have in Marvelous Fall, celebrating Israel. This day is based on a single premise, and that is that if we can learn together, we can live together. And I'm going to keep all my comments super short so that we can hear primarily from our speaker. I just want to mention just a couple practical things, which are that if you have a cell phone, if you can please turn that off or at least put it to silent. And as I mentioned, among the goals of this day is to create a safe place for learning and dialogue about Israel. And in this light, there are several requests. Please expect and respect diversity among those in this room. But since we will be not having members of the audience speak during this session in particular, this mostly applies to the way that we will listen to one another. There's plenty of time during this day for speaking and learning. We invite you to ask questions of Rabbi Melchior by writing them on note cards and passing them to ushers as we come closer to that time. At this moment, it is a pleasure to welcome the Deputy Consul General from the Consulate General's office to the Midwest, Shahar Arieli, who has been working for the State of Israel all his adult life, serving the Ministry of Foreign Affairs now for 6 years. He was born in Israel in 1971. He graduated at Tel Aviv University Law School, and he is married, has one child. It's a pleasure to welcome him to Mount Sinai.
Thank you, Rabbi, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, although I must confess that I'm truly disappointed because I heard so much about the winter in Minnesota. What's that? But anyway, I was asked to address the topic of was asked to speak about the topic of pluralism in Israel in 4 minutes. And, so I have my work cut out for me here, so allow me to dive straight into it and make a few points that I think are important not only for this topic, but for most of the issues to be discussed in this conference. So first of all, I think it's important to remember that when we are speaking about pluralism, political pluralism, equal rights, and so on, we have to remember that we're not speaking about Switzerland or Belgium, for example, and not even about the US for this matter. We're speaking about Israel. And in Israel, the first challenge that we face and that we are still facing is how to ensure Israel's survival. How to ensure Israel's survival in the Middle East in the long term. Because the sad fact of the matter is that the majority of countries in the Middle East still don't accept the fact that we are present there. They don't recognize us. And I leave it to you to try and estimate how many of our neighbors would seriously object if we were to disappear somehow tomorrow. Not too far from Israel, we have a country, maybe 20 times the size of Israel. And if no drastic change will be made soon, they will be armed to the teeth with dozens of nuclear missiles pointed at Israel, among others. And it will be only the decision of the Ayatollahs of Iran whether or not and when to push the red button. And the leader of this country has been, as you all know, I'm sure, has been persistently calling for the destruction of the state of Israel, or like he puts it, to wipe Israel out, as simple as that. And Iran is making proxies, terrorist organizations that are answering to it on our borders. Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, and these proxies, these terrorist organizations, are soon to be protected by the Iranian nuclear umbrella. So, when we're speaking about pluralism and equal rights and so on in Israel, we have to remember the background that we have to remember what is in the background. And not only Arabs have equal rights in Israel, but Israel is still the only place in the Middle East in which Arab citizens can vote and be voted to the parliament in free and fair elections. Now everybody is speaking about Egypt. Egypt is under the microscope, and everybody is so afraid of the Muslim Brotherhood. What does it mean, and so on. And we know that the Muslim Brotherhood was banned as a political movement in Egypt for years. And in many other Arab countries, the Islamic parties are either banned or severely restricted. But in Israel, we have an Arab Islamic party in the parliament for years. We have to remember that when we're speaking about pluralism. And the Arab Islamic parties, together with other Arab parties. And if anyone has any doubt, let me assure you that not one of them is exactly a member in the Zionist movement. So again, on this background of a country which is practically under siege for the 60 plus years of its existence, I think our achievements in terms of human rights and political pluralism, I think our achievements are not to be taken lightly. And now let me move to the topic which I know is on your minds, and this is religious pluralism in Israel. And I don't want to address it too much because the next speaker is surely the right man for the job, but we understand that the Reform and conservative Jews would like to see drastic changes to the status quo in Israel. And in the dominant role that the Orthodox Jewry has in Israel. And we know that the situation is not perfect and it is evolving. But the truth is that this is the outcome of the democratic process in Israel. And when the secular public, which is the majority, is not really concerned with these questions because they don't affect his life. And the secular public is mainly concerned when he votes, when we are voting to parliament, we are mainly concerned in the questions of how to ensure Israel's survivability and how to solve the conflict with our neighbors. And when the Orthodox public is more concerned with these questions of state of religion, and they do vote on that, they make an influence on the status quo. But the truth is that the status quo is not really a status quo. It is changing, it is evolving. And I remember growing up in a small town near Tel Aviv, you couldn't go to the movies on Friday night because of Shabbat. Now, people in my hometown of Netanya, they have the choice of 20 different cinemas. I remember that you couldn't, the idea of a restaurant which is not kosher was almost inconceivable. And now we have McDonald's everywhere. We can eat cheeseburger on Shabbat too, by the way. So, there are changes. The situation is becoming more liberal, but the truth is that as long as the political situation stays the way it is, and Reform and conservative Jews are not present in Israel in large enough numbers, I would say that the changes to the status quo are being made in a way like porcupines are making love. Slowly and very, very carefully. So thank you for coming. We really appreciate the time that you're taking to learn more about Israel. Your opinion is very important to us, and we are open to criticism, and we know Israel is not a perfect country, but we do have to remember that Israel's existence is nothing short of a miracle. And if Israel will fall, we will not have another one. And it exists for all of us, and we all have a stake in it. So, thank you, and I wish you an enjoyable process.
Thank you so much for your comments, for your lasting images, and helping us define what is an existential issue. So it is a joy to invite Steve Hunnigs, who is Executive Director of the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas, who has done a remarkable job in that position, bringing the Jewish community to a favorable light to the wider community as well. And it is a joy of working with him. He's going to be introducing Rabbi Melchior.
Boker Tov, Shavua Tov, everyone. I concur with Rabbi Spilker. I'd like to hear that last metaphor in the original Hebrews. Thank you to Mount Zion, the Israel Consulate, all of our community partners. This is a wonderful, amazing event. Okay. Brought about by the work of so many different hands. The rabbi's topic, Rabbi Melchior, it's my pleasure to introduce, is one that's critical to diaspora-Israel relations. Pluralism in the United States looks very different than pluralism in Israel. And Rabbi Melchior is highly qualified to discuss this topic. He has deep ties to Israel. He has deep ties to the diaspora. At the outset, Rabbi Melchior should feel at home in Minnesota. He has a strong Norwegian connection. He has a strong Danish connection. We have 1.5 million Minnesotans of Scandinavian descent here. So welcome home, so to speak. Rabbi Melchior, as I mentioned, comes from Denmark, where for 7 generations he and his family members have served as chief rabbis. In 1999, he was elected to the Knesset and appointed to Prime Minister Ehud Barak's cabinet as Minister for Israel Society and the World Jewish Community. He served in successive governments as Deputy Foreign Minister, Deputy Minister of Education, and Deputy Minister to the Prime Minister's office. Since leaving the Knesset, Rabbi Melchior has turned his focus to leading the civil society movements that he helped build over the last decade. Rabbi Melchior launched Moetzet Echad, a forum which promotes dialogue and understanding between different strands in Israel society, Meitarim, a network of pluralistic Jewish schools whose open democratic ethos enables religious and secular students to study their heritage together. The Citizens Accord Forum, which campaigns for coexistence between Arabs and Jews in Israel, and the correction of injustices against Israel's Arab minority. And the Mosaic Center for Interreligious Cooperation, which is devoted to to expanding and deepening interreligious dialogue in the Middle East on a grassroots basis. If that wasn't enough, Rabbi Melchior was the founding chairman of Birthright Taglit Steering Committee. Rabbi Melchior is married to Hannah, an occupational therapist, and is the father of 5 children, no doubt many grandchildren. 2, let us give a warm St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota welcome to Rabbi Melchior.
Thank you very much for making me feel home for the nearly 2 hours I've already been in Minneapolis, and together with all my Scandinavian friends. It's good to be here. I don't complain over the weather, that it's not cold enough. It's fine with me. I feel at home here, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. It was really, I must say, thrilling to come into the halls here and see the balloons and the excitement and the young people running around, and this is the way active Jewish community life should be and could be and can be, as I see if you can do it here in Minnesota. The truth is, when I first was asked to come to Minnesota, I didn't have a clue where it was. I actually thought it was somewhere in Florida. I thought it would be a good thing from Chicago, which was freezing, to come to Florida, but the plane took me somewhere else, and here I am. I would like to, I might do some polemics with my good friend from the Consul of Shahar. I liked your parallel. I must tell you though that it's nice that you can eat a cheeseburger on Shabbat. I'm pleased that that Shabbat did not fall on Yom Kippur also, which could have been. But I'm not sure that the status quo is going in the right direction. That can be argued. That can be argued very much. There are different directions. Let's be pluralistic about it and say that there are different directions. We might get back to that later. I cannot, though, stand on such an important podium, and thank you to the Rabbi for letting another rabbi speak at the podium. Not all rabbis do that, you should know. And in such an impressive hall, I cannot talk about what I'm supposed to talk about without relating to what's happening in the world in the last 20 days, or the last 2 days, or however you want it, what's happening in Egypt. I want to make a statement about it, which I feel very strongly for. You should know that many people in Israel and Jews outside who care for Israel are very worried. Now that is a good Jewish trend to be worried, and you know, the little gender sexist remark is that the Yiddish mama, this we have from our Yiddish mamas, as if our fathers are not equally worried. But in any case, we have a Jewish expression that comes from the Tehillim, Ashrei HaMefached Tamid. We should always be concerned. And another Jewish expression where everything we attend to, we say, Kabdehu v'chashtehu. You should respect it and you should suspect it. This is the kind of approach we have. And again, if you look at the last 120 years of Jewish history, and even the last 2,000 years if you want to extend it, we have many good reasons to suspect and to be afraid of the future. But, and I want to make this very, very clear, you cannot see something going on like what is going on in the biggest and strongest Arab country, nearly 84 million people, who are our neighbors, and see the expression, the sincere expression of joy, of happiness, of pride, for achieving freedom, and for putting oppression and slavery aside, and be a part of the Jewish people and of the state of Israel, be concerned with the Jewish people and state of Israel, and not be a part of that joy. There is no such thing. When humankind, for good reasons, is rejoicing freedom, freedom from oppression. We, as part of humankind and as Jews, we should rejoice with them. And we should not only chashteu, not only suspect and fear, but also kabdei, also respect, also receive this with open arms and with open hearts. And I'm saying this in spite of knowing all the good reasons, what might come tomorrow and so on. I probably one of the 3.5 Israelis who know something about the Muslim Brotherhood and other phenomena going on. By the way, it's interesting. I'm following your press here. It's not any better than our press in Israel. Now suddenly, everybody's talking about this oppressive dictator, Mubarak, and all the terrible things, how he's been putting people in jail and torturing them and so on for years and years. It's interesting, we never heard anything about this in the last 30 years. You know, if you're the ally with the right person, then it doesn't matter how much you're tyrants. This is just a comment. I'm not, of course, critical of the press, God forbid. But this is a comment, and I want to make it even a stronger comment, because it's important in our world, I think, to say, and this is what concerns me also when we come to issues of pluralism and other issues. I think that there is no such concept, no such notion as something which is good for humankind, something which is right and moral and ethics, and Judaism, in its broad definition, is opposed to it. There is no such thing. There can be, it's an oxymoron, there can be no such thing. So this was important for me to start this, and I think that we should be happy. I think we will soon be rejoicing. You might have started cleaning already, I don't know. But Pesach is not just about cleaning. And it's not just about being strict with not drinking whiskey, and I don't misunderstand me, I'm for cleaning, and I'm against whiskey on Pesach. Very, very clear about it. But it's not just about that. Pesach is about Yitziat Mitzrayim. It's about leaving Egypt. What does this mean to leave Egypt? It's not a geographical concept. It means leaving behind us oppression and dictatorship and a class society where there are so many levels of decision, which is what the idolatry of the old Egypt represented. Pharaoh was the king who in his own eyes not only was the king, but was God. In Sefer Yechezkel it says that Pharaoh says about the Nile, which is the main source of the water in Egypt, Ani asitini, I have created the Nile. This is the kind of class society where Joseph, even when he becomes prime minister, cannot eat bread together with the Egyptians. This is the class society which Lot, when he comes together with Abraham back to Israel after the famine in Israel, already then we were needing rain. Lot decides to go to where? To Sodom. Why? Because it reminds him the kind of way they act in Sodom. It reminds him what we saw in Egypt, says the Torah. What did they do in Sodom? I'll just bring you one metaphor there. It's an interesting metaphor, I have to share it with you. It's come from Spilker. Spilker said there are 4 different kinds of people. There are those people who are very generous, like this community, who say, what is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. Those are tzaddikim, good, righteous, generous people. Then there are those who say, what is yours is mine, and what is mine is mine. Those are bad people. And then there are those who say, what is yours is mine, and what is mine is yours. Those are confused people. It's a Spilker, by the way. Then there is the last group. The last group says, what is mine, and what is yours is yours. Now you would think that these are maybe the normal people, or regular people. The Mishnah has 2 opinions on it. The first opinion says that these are mediocre people. Midah Beinonit. Now, mediocre can mean like normal, but it doesn't really mean that. I'll tell you, I'm not exaggerating, I once studied this Mishnah in the airport, in Ben Gurion Airport. This cannot happen in St. Paul's Airport, I'm sorry to say. I was studying the Mishnah, and over me comes somebody, taps on my shoulder. It turns out that it's a Supreme Court judge from the Israeli Supreme Court, and he asked me, well, which Mishnah are you studying? So I showed him that I was studying this Mishnah, and then he started to give me a lecture of an hour of what the mediocre means in the Talmudic expression, so much so that although I tried to explain to him that I had a plane to catch, I didn't the plane. So this is part of the pluralism of Israel. The other opinion, though, in the Mishnah, said that Midat Stom, that somebody who says what is mine and what is yours, that is Midat Stom. That's what the people did in Stom. Now how come? The people in Stom, which were so wicked that there was no existence for them, only for the tzaddikim amongst them, the righteous, who were only a couple of people and they shouldn't have lived there in the first place. A society so terrible that there's no existence. Is that what they do? It's even worse than the ones who say everything is mine. Why? I think it means that somebody who says what is mine, what is yours, is somebody who doesn't care. The whole concept of solidarity, of caring, of taking responsibility for society, of fighting for human rights and human dignity, always, is the basic Jewish concept. When the Human Rights Declaration was signed in the UN, the 10th of December 1948, the same year as the State of Israel was created, it was not a coincidence that these two events came together. The Human Rights document is not an anti-Israeli or anti-Jewish document. It is a very Jewish document, which came on the basis of what happened in the years before the Holocaust, when Hitler said to the nations of the world, what happens with me is mine. You take care of your people, what happens with me and mine. It's true, he also said to the world, if you're so happy with the Jews, you can have them, and nobody wanted them. But that's another story. But the principle is, of Hitler, of the absolute evil, is not caring. Much worse than the thieves who say everything is mine. And that was what they did in Sodom. That was the kind of righteousness they did in Egypt. And therefore those who rise up against that kind of oppression, those who do not understand that where human dignity and human rights and human decency is on the stake, that is where the Jewish people has to be. That is where we have to focus. That has to become the center of our world. That is what Judaism is about. Now, with your permission, I want to take one step back and look on the main issue which I was asked to share with you today. I want to say the following. Look where the Jewish people was 120 years ago. 120 years ago, the Jewish people was a people by far and large living in the extended Poland. Many people don't know that. But more than 90%, 90% of the Jews in the world were living in the extended Poland 120 years ago with the beginning of Zionism. Western Europe, North America, Arab countries, all together were less than 10%. Something which people don't know, you can check it. A lot of people have checked me on this fact. It's true. The Jewish people as a whole, not only those 90%, but also most of the rest, were a people with a nation which both individually and collectively was a nation in danger. Jews went to bed without knowing to what reality they would wake up the next day. And in spite of the worst century which we've had from a Jewish perspective and from a perspective of humankind, with the peak of the worst crime that humankind has committed. Zionism as a political revolution was by far and large a tremendous success. The situation of the Jewish people 120 years ago and the situation of where we are today, and the Consul also mentioned several of these aspects, we are in a radically different place today. Practically all Jews in the world today live in security. Also, with all the dangers we have in Israel, I don't underestimate the Ahmadinejad's, the combination of a mad, messianic, religious, totalitarian expression, which is the small sect which Ahmadinejad belongs to, together with weapons of mass destruction, is not a good combination. It's a deadly combination which we rightly so should fight with everything we have. But it's a deadly combination, not first of all against the Jewish people, in spite of the anti-Semitic poison which comes out of that man and his associates' mouths. It's a danger against humankind as such. And anti-Semitism today, I deal a lot with anti-Semitism. I created the Global Forum to combat anti-Semitism. I know a little bit about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism today is not a Jewish issue. It's a humane issue. It's an issue of decency, of democracy, of civilization. You cannot have a society with anti-Semitism today and think that you can build on truth and decency and so on. As you cannot have any other kind of xenophobia, any other kind of racism and hatred towards population. You cannot build something which is sound, which is healthy on truth. You cannot build that if you accept a level of anti-Semitism in your midst. And therefore, I want to say to you that it's by time now that we come out of the mode of just dealing with our physical survival. That has been a success in our midst. Please, it's a little disturbing, sir. I mean, we're trying here to do something serious. I'm sure you also are, but if you do it afterwards, it would be fine. 120 years have passed. Today, more than 99% of Jews are living in security, either in the states of Israel or in democracies, sound democracies around the world. And if they didn't like where they were, the gates of Israel are always open for everybody to come and join us. And it's quite good, actually, to live there. The time has come when we stop talking about the redemption of the redemption of the Jew, or of the Jewish people, and we start talking about redeeming Judaism. And this, I think, today is not just another issue which you have to fill up a program and you put in something in the program. For me, and I think for more and more of the young people in Israel and outside Israel, this is issue number one. This is our existential challenge. Because it's very good to talk about that we're a Jewish state and a state for the Jewish people and so on. What does that mean? What is it in context? So there's so many people around the world. According to the United Nations definition, we have more than 3,000 nations who have even maybe a right to self-determination. So we're another one, 3,001. So who really cares? Why is that important to anybody? If it is not the content, the purpose, the ethics, the goals, the vision of what it means to be Jewish, which is what binds us. Now, when Zionism started, there were different groups of the Jewish people who have tried to reinvent, tried to create and make and make relevant the Judaism which has been for 2,000 years. The first group which tried to do it very powerfully was the secular, mostly socialist, but not only, also the revisionist, Zionism. Ben-Gurion and Ber Katznetson and Achadam and so on, they talked about the new Jew. The truth was that this new Jew was a kind of Karaite Jew. It was a kind of Jew who took a jump from the Bible, maybe a little after the Bible, and you can say from Bar Kokhba to Trumbull, more or less that. Jumped over 1900 years of not only Jewish history, but Jewish thinking and writing and religion and philosophy and memories, going directly from the old land of Israel to the new land of Israel. This attempt, which was interesting and should be analyzed more and more, and I can talk a lot about it, but there's a guy with some things here who will tell me I soon have to end. I won't go into the depth of this. But this did not succeed, I think mainly because Ben-Gurion gave up the monopoly on Jewish interpretation, gave that monopoly in the hands of the Orthodox establishment already from 1935, but for sure from 1948. Which meant that in a way he liberated the vast majority of Jews in Israel at that time were secular. That's not true anymore. But at that time were secular. He liberated the Jews of Israel from taking responsibility for their Judaism and gave it into the hand of the religious, which at that time was mostly modern Orthodox, in the meantime has become more and more ultra-Orthodox. Now he did that for many reasons, coalition reasons, of, I think, something which has become more and more clear in the recent years, which is not his fault, because he took his Judaism very seriously. That Ben-Gurion could call in a press conference when he found a new interpretation to a word in the Bible, and the journalists would come. Today they wouldn't come to such a press conference. But even if our Prime Minister would call it. But he also did it because he was convinced that in a modern, Western, liberal state, there is no room for religion. Religion is something which belongs to the past, to the Jewish past. Not for the new society, and therefore he knew that in another generation we will have a free Western liberal constitution, and there will be only one stream of education because the others will evaporate. There is no room for this, ideologically, theologically. It didn't succeed as we know today. There are others who have tried. The non-Orthodox have tried to reinvent also in Israel a new Judaism, and on many reasons have also failed, in spite of the very nice attempts, but have failed in creating that new Judaism of Israel. The modern Orthodox, the religious Zionist movement, very much saw itself in that perspective for very many years. Also with renewal of halakha and having a national halakha and so on, they also failed. They also failed for different reasons. One was that they put all the eggs in the basket of Eretz Yisrael Shlema, of Judea and Samaria and Gaza being a part of the future of Israel. And they gave up the leadership in areas as the rabbinate and education and social institutions and so on. And this was one of the reasons why they failed. So today we are, I think, in a crossroad, a very important crossroad. And here there is reason for a lot of concern and a lot of suspicion. We are at a crossroad of what is the expression, what is the identity, what is the soul of the Judaism of the State of Israel and the Jewish world, because everything, what happens there, has consequence here. It's very nice, you were kind enough to state that I was the founding chairman of Birthright Israel. we're now rejoicing over the last 10 years, 11 years. We celebrate 10 years for 3 years, it's fine. We are celebrating now that we have 300,000 students who have come on Birthright. It's unbelievable. And if you go to the Brandeis University and other places, you'll see very good research about this. But I'm telling you, in spite of all the research, one of my sons is a part of the team which does the research, so I can't slander it, but he can do it. But the basic is that in the long run, even the most wonderful experience, you have here up here the 10 Commandments. Okay? On Shabbat we will read how Moses took the 10 Commandments, the letter of God, Miftav Elokim, as it says in the Torah, and he crushed them because they had no importance, even the biggest revelation of history. 40 days after, when the people are running around the golden calf and dancing, then there is no meaning to what happened as the biggest event of history 40 days before. And a birthright trip, and a spiritual trip, and whatever, the best educational experience, if there is not a sound connection of a Judaism which is meaningful and relevant and exciting and romantic for young people today, they'll just cut it out. They will cut out the relationship to Israel, they'll cut out the relationship to Judaism, whatever interpretation of Judaism you present. And therefore the biggest challenge we have today is how do we recreate, redefine, based on all the texts and all the memories and all the interpretations and the luggage with which we have from thousands of years of Jewish thinking, how do we recreate this in a new situation which the Jewish people has not been in for so long? The truth is, in 3,500 years of Jewish history since we left Egypt, we've only had a couple of hundred years with real political independence in our own country. It's a very seldom phenomenon, and we haven't dealt with it very well when we had it in the past. Now we have this last but very important challenge and chance. And we cannot in any way let it go, because then the Jewish people will cease to be a people. There'll still be Jews around, but Jews will be a sect. If Jews are a sect, it has no meaning, not for Jews, not for non-Jews, not for the future of a Jewish state, and not for the future of humankind. Now the good story is, which I came to share with you, is that there is a beginning of such a revolution today going on in Israel, and I feel also many places around the Jewish world. Even this event could be seen as a part of that chain of this revolution, where people put aside their differences. We have differences. Listen, I'm standing here in this synagogue, in this temple. I'm standing here as a strictly Orthodox rabbi who believes in halakha, and probably on most theological and halachic issues will disagree with your rabbi and with your congregation. But I stand here because I believe that in the collective Jewish responsibility, I can not only agree with your rabbi, but we can find a common ground which will excite a new generation of young Jews who want to find a Judaism which is authentic. It's not the ultra-Orthodox which is authentic. That is bringing us back to the ghetto, back to the Judaism of the sects. But a Judaism which is relevant in all areas of life, which we can agree upon. We can agree also to disagree about halakha. For me, when I talk about it in Israel, it's not towards the Reform Jews, it's towards the secular Jews. I build schools today. We started 10 years ago with the first school. None of us believed it would work. Today we have in our network already 320 schools running. That's a lot, with a whole new concept of Judaism. Responsibility for Judaism, more 120,000 schools. Kids. In my schools alone, which we started, where religious and secular, very orthodox and very secular, people who are strict on every detail of halakha, and people who are apikosim, who are heretics, who don't believe in God, don't believe in the existence of God, and disagree with everything I hold holy. But we're willing to build a Judaism and study a Judaism together. And it's a whole new way of interpretation. It's a new way of reading the Torah, of reading the Talmud, of reading Yehuda Michai, and of reading any text which is relevant in Jewish history and is relevant today. This is happening not only in education and in kindergarten and school. We're building institutes, we're building Batei Midrash, where boys and girls, secular and religious, are sitting together. These are people who serve in the army, but don't think that you become more Jewish by not serving your country. People who serve in the most important and difficult combat units of IDF, but they're willing to, on top of that, to give at least 2 years of their life to serve society. They understand that it's not just a question of secure borders, it's important, but that today the real battle is about a secure, a just society. And Israel today is not a just society. Israel today has the biggest pollution in many of the areas in the Western world. Israel today has the biggest gap between the haves and haves not in the Israeli society. That is not a Jewish state. And these young people, thousands and thousands who are involved in this, are willing to say, we will do a better job in the next generation. We will build an Israel together. We understood that the old generation had to take care of our security. We still are doing this. But we will talk about what is a Jewish state about. What does a Jewish state have to say on health, on environment, on relation to the other, on who do the natural resources of the country belong to, on what is Jewish foreign policy, and so on and so forth. Studying Jewish texts together and making them relevant and exciting. I'm saying romantic because we see a lot of romance. When opposites come together, people of different beliefs put their differences aside and start to live together. There is a feeling of romance in the air. And this is happening in Israel today. I want to end this question, the Q&A, right? Okay, so I'll end just this part by just one comment. The most important work in Jewish history, probably, of Jewish philosophy, was a book which was written in the 12th century by a rabbi called Rabbi Yehuda Levi. He wrote a book called the Kuzari. If you haven't heard about it, it's worthwhile getting hold of it and studying it. It's built on a story, a true story, of a kingdom somewhere in the east of Russia, southeast of Russia, where the king decided that he wanted the whole people to have one religion. So he called in a Jew and a Christian and a Muslim, and he interviewed them about their religion. And then he decided to adopt Judaism. And this whole book is the book of how he adopted Judaism. And actually it happened historically, it's true. The whole nation converted to Judaism. It's so much true that the biggest expert on this conversion, and later on today we'll talk about conversion. I have a session about that where I promise you that you'll hear things which you've never heard in your life. But the one who was mostly interested in this issue was one of our classical enemies called Arafat. Arafat studied the story of the Khuzars, and he decided that we have no right to the land of Israel because all the Jews who come today, they come from the Khuzars. And they had no origin in Eretz Israel originally. In any case, that's of course not true, but this was Arafat's argument. So the story is out there. The king asks him one question only, which the Jew has no answer to. He says to him, listen, all these lovely principles of ethics and ideas and practices of Judaism, that's all very fine. As long as you have no power. But what will happen the day when you again will obtain political power? Will you then again be able to talk and preach and study and excite with those values which you have been telling me about? And the Jew has no answer to that question, because he's honest. That is our question today. Israel has been preoccupied, Zionism has been preoccupied, and rightly so, justifiably so, with survival, with security, with establishing our existence. Today, we have to relate to that question, and I hope that we can relate by together building a Zionism and a Judaism where we will be able to answer in the affirmative, but we'll be able to say to the king of Consul, yes, also when we have political power, this will not be our excuse to put away our path, our beliefs, and so on. And I hope that you will join in with the hundreds of thousands of young Israelis today who are getting more and more excited, taking more and more responsibility for the Judaism which doesn't belong to anybody, it belongs to everybody. Thank you very much.
Imagine living in a country where you can have a politician who brings together Jewish texts and vision in such a way. How inspiring. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a question, I invite you to raise your hand. People have note cards, our ushers have note cards so that they can pass them up. I want to begin with one question. We have several, so we'll ask brief responses. In the past 25 years, the reform and conservative movements within Israel have gone from just a few shuls to many, over 40. And it's still relatively small within Israel, but still it's a growing movement. What advice, if any, would you offer in this realm of pluralism to the Masorti and reform movements?
First of all, I don't want to minimize the good job which is done by many very important and some very thoughtful reform and conservative leaders in Israel. But 40 shuls in Israel, when we have, you know how many shuls there are in Israel? Just in Jerusalem alone we have more than 2,000. In Tel Aviv, which is not Bnei Brak, there are more than 800 synagogues. I mean, so 40 isn't so impressive. What, however, there are is that there are impressive individuals. And what I would recommend to them, I understand that the reform have to fight to be very reform and the conservative to be very conservative, orthodox. At a certain stage, we have to put these things aside. We should continue to have our differences and pray with our differences and so on. But I would recommend, which I do, I'm sitting very closely in conversation with many of the leading in all three streams of Judaism and also those who are unaffiliated, for maybe very many good reasons. Because we're not doing always a good job in the representative Jewish sphere. Even sometimes I have a feeling that some of our rabbis, of course the president are not included in this, they sometimes have to find what is diametrical opposite to what is good and moral and decent, and then they come out on that stand. I'm sorry to say this, that you have such a nice day today, but I was asked also to speak the truth in that presence. What I would recommend to you, both in Israel and outside, let's build something together. Listen, also here in America, the biggest challenge you have is that you also are losing the young people. It's not that people, for me, I think in our generation, after the Holocaust, the generation born after the Holocaust, some of you were born before, I think the most important challenge is how do we keep Jews not only inside the fold, but excited about the Jews. And they're not going to stay there. There are too many options out there. They're not going to stay there if Judaism and Israel is not relevant in their lives. They're not going to fight against Israel, not going to demonstrate. A few might do that. You know what? I even prefer that. At least that means that they've taken a stand or something. Although usually it comes from all kinds of misunderstanding, it doesn't matter. At least they care. I think that we have so much exciting content if we work it together. If we find the way in the seam between our different ways of looking at practice of Judaism. In that seam, if we build a new thinking based on the past, but not hostage by the past. If we can do that, I think that we can create something really, really wonderful. And where it's happening, and it is happening, you should see the excitement, the Jewish excitement, the Zionist excitement. Because today we can also practice it. Something which, you know, I'm very much in disagreement with Aleph Bet Yehoshua. A.B. Yehoshua, one of Israel's greatest writers, he made a speech here in the American Jewish Committee a couple of years ago, and he's a good friend of mine, a real good friend. I don't agree with one word of it. His comment is that even the Jew in Israel who is furthest away from Judaism even in its more broad interpretation, not in the religious narrow interpretation, that even that Jew is much, much more Jewish than the most Jewish person outside Israel. That was his statement. And he gave it a long explanation. I think it's not true. I think that you can live in Israel today and you can speak the Jewish language and you live in the Jewish calendar and you can be totally non-connected to Judaism even in its most broad sense and interpretation. If it is not a Jewish agenda, we can have differences about what that Jewish agenda should be. But if you don't have a Jewish agenda, a Jewish understanding, a Jewish memory, a Jewish association, then it's not Judaism. You might as well do the same thing in Scandinavia or in Minnesota, anywhere else. While here, in spite of you being very involved, and I see that there are a lot of people very involved and very caring Jews, there is one thing which you can never do here. This I agree with that. You can never express this. You can express it as Jews in a pluralistic American society. But it will never be a Jewish policy which will be decided in Washington. It cannot, per definition, be that. In Israel it can. That is part of our self-determination, of us being a part, at least, of defining who we are and how we are together. But this challenge we cannot do alone in Israel. We need you to be able to open our minds and